Hi, everybody. It's Karen Anderson here with Aortic Hope for a very special live Q&A. We actually were going to do this the last day of the month during Aortic Disease Awareness Month in September, but I couldn't make it. So I had to do a reschedule, and I'm so sorry about that. But I'm so excited that we have Chris Doherty and Barbara Mountain with, I know I'm always butchering the name. I try so hard. Doherty or Doherty?
Doherty, Cella, and
Doherty.
Keane.
Cella and Keane. Yes. So I'm so excited to have you guys here. This is always a very favored live event because we're going to talk about how to navigate the Social Security disability process. And I know a lot of people in the community are thinking about starting this process. They're not sure where to start. Maybe some are employed and they're on disability right now, short term, or maybe they've just gone back to work and they're struggling. And then there's also people who are stuck in this process and they're unsure what to do. And there's actually some very brave souls. I'm saying brave, but I don't know that I would agree, that are trying to navigate this by themselves without using any attorneys, which I firmly believe is not the way to go. I think you need the specialists, rallying behind you. So I want to talk about this process. And before we get started, I want to remind everybody, please click like, please click subscribe. It's a mouthful. I get tongue-tied. And don't forget to click the bell. This way you're notified every time we go live and you won't miss an opportunity like this. So welcome, both of you. Thank you again, as always.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
It's always a pleasure. So I'm not sure who wants to go first, but if you want to take a minute, you can tell everybody about yourself, both of you, and then we can just jump right into talking about everything SSDI.
Sure, I'll lead off. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Doherty, and I'm the Doherty and Doherty, Cella, and Keane. I'm the founding partner of DCK, and that was back in November of '95. So we're coming up next year, in about 13 months, on our 30th anniversary.
Oh.
So all we do is we represent people and get them entitled into Social Security disability benefits. My background is I used to work for the Social Security Administration, and I was going to law school at night when I did that. And then I ended up putting the two of them together, and we've been representing people, getting them entitled to Social Security, ever since then. And I'll turn you over now to Barbara Mountain.
Hi, my name is Barbara Mountain. I'm the National Director of Business Development with Doherty, Cella, Keane. I started my career right out of college working for the Social Security Administration. I was a social insurance specialist, which means I had expertise in both Social Security law and supplemental security income law. And I also did a lot of training for the administration. I was there for about 7 years. Then I went to the insurance world, where I helped manage a Social Security advocacy program for a large group market carrier. Those are the people that pay out long-term disability and short-term disability benefits. Then I kind of combined my backgrounds working with insurance disability and also with Social Security disability advocacy when I went with Doherty, Cella, Keane. So it's really utilized my background in understanding the importance of Social Security to claimants and also the importance that it is to the insurance world or people who have long-term disability benefits. Fortunately, I love what I do. I'm passionate about Social Security disability and look forward to talking to you more about the program and the process.
Wonderful. And we will have all of the information for the community members that wish to reach out to you. That'll all be listed here as well at the end in case anybody has any questions. So let's jump right in, because boy, this can be a daunting process. So let's assume there's a community member who let's start off with just a simple diagnosis. Then we'll get to the extreme of having an aortic dissection and something that was so emergent and life altering. So a good question came up the other day from a community member who said, I was just diagnosed with having an aortic dissection. I mean, aneurysm. They didn't even know they had it. It happens, on the side because they had a CT scan for something completely unrelated, and they found out they have this, and now they're going to be monitored for a while, and hopefully it doesn't grow and then require surgical intervention or some type of intervention. But the question was, now that I know I have this, do I get disability? And so without knowing if their job is labor intensive, because if it is, they probably have restrictions now and can't lift certain weights and what have you. I guess let's just start from a general, somebody finds out they have this that could potentially lead to something a lot worse. What do they do, and how do we know who qualifies and under what basis?
Yeah, I would say just by the diagnosis alone, they wouldn't necessarily qualify. It has to lead to certain restrictions that prevent you from doing not only your past work, but any other type of job. So unfortunately, like you mentioned, this person didn't even know they had this, and it might have been there for quite some time. So hopefully she's got specialists who are going to keep a close eye on it. So unless it actually interferes with the ability to do your not only your past work, but any other job, the diagnosis alone would not lead to automatic disability.
Right. Right. So it really does come down, like you said, to not being able to do your job and any future job. Does that change depending on your age at all? Do we get a break when we get closer to retirement age and where it's just do the job that you've been doing, or does that not matter?
Yeah, basically, if you're, and I'll just try and break it down in simplest terms, if you're under age 50, if you can do whatever the easiest job in the world might be, Social Security would say, well, you're not totally disabled, go do that job. Even if it's not going to pay what you want it to pay, or even if it's maybe below the line of work that you used to do. So basically, if you're under 50, if you can do the easiest job in the world, then they would say you're not disabled, go do that job rather than go on disability.
Right.
But once an individual attains age 50, then they kind of go by, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So if you're beyond age 50, then they look at, okay, well, they'll only say that you can, first they'll say, can you do your past job? If you cannot do that, then they'll say, well, based on your residual functional capacity, can you do any other job based on your age, your education, and your past work experience? And then there's another gradation at 55 and another at 60. So basically, the older you get, the kind of, just in simplest terms, the less disabled you have to be in order to be found disabled.
So, Barbara, what do you think if somebody were to be diagnosed with an aneurysm and they're given restrictions that they can't lift more than 10 pounds, 15 pounds, but they've been in construction, or they're in home building, or they're in a medical position that requires them to be able to lift over 50, the weight of another person? What happens to somebody in that situation? Is that a case where you would first step into HR and see if there's an additional duty? And then what if there isn't? Like, what happens to somebody in that situation?
Well, if they're under 50, unfortunately, if their only limitation is the fact that they can't do heavy occupation, the idea is they could do a light occupation or a sedentary occupation. And if they're under 50, the thought process is then they could learn the skills to do that. It's really the person who's 50 or older. Well, then maybe there's a possibility of getting them on disability if they don't have the skills necessary to do a sedentary job, so to speak. So the definition of disability is a disability that's expected to last for at least 12 months or result in death. That prevents you from being able to work. This is a workers program, so the way you pay into Social Security is by working and paying your FICA taxes. Your FICA taxes are your premiums, and that's what's allowing you to be eligible for Social Security disability benefits. So the idea behind Social Security disability is you're unable to work, and so this is supposed to replace that income that you don't have because you can't work. That's the type of insurance that it is. However, you have to be found disabled and you have to meet the criteria Social Security has established, which really is kind of a permanent, well, not really a permanent disability. It doesn't have to be permanent, but it does have to be kind of complete, at least for a certain period of time that's going to last for at least 12 months. So say you're in a car accident, you have, pretty severe condition, you can't do anything, but you're predicted to get better around 11 months, you would not be found disabled, even though you can't do anything. Say you have 2 broken arms, 2 broken legs, you're immobile, maybe your speech is even impacted. If that medical were to show that you're expected to get better within 12 months, you wouldn't be found disabled. So it does have to be something that's going to last for at least 12 months and does prevent you from being able to work. And again, like Chris mentioned, they're going to look at your prior jobs, they're going to look at your education level, and the age, again, is really important because if you're under 50, do you have the ability to learn skills maybe you don't have right now? And the thought process is that you do.
Okay. All right. Well, I love that definition. And long time ago, and we've said it ever since, you one time described disability as being an insurance policy. And, from the day that you said that, and I think I might have even still been involved in the disability process. I think I finally got approved after I'd already known, well, I knew you guys because I worked with you guys personally. But when you said that, it was like something clicked. And I think a lot of people shy away from the disability process because they think there's shame, they feel humiliated, there's a sense of defeat, that you have to asking for disability. It's like, wait a minute, I've always worked since I was 14 or 15, and now I can't go back. And so it's this shock that you can't go back, but now it's, what does the income look like? What have I done to my family? It's so many negative emotions when really you have to flip the script and look at what you're asking for. And I remember the gentleman I was working with had said to me, we don't know what your future holds right now. We just know right now, as far as we can see, you're not going to be able to go back to work, right? All these comorbidities and issues. And I remember talking to the judge, and I hate to jump out of line, but we'll get to the process. And I remember saying that I have always worked and I don't know what else to do to work. And this is hard enough not being able to figure out my identity, but I'm asking for help today. And I know that for right now, until who knows, I can't go back to work. So I'm knocking on the door to say, I need my insurance policy. I need to cash it in, and I need the help today for all these years I put in. And it was like, once I flipped the narrative, it seemed like something I was entitled to. It was okay that I was asking for it. So explain this a little bit more, because you do such a great job at explaining it. I think it makes a lot of people more comfortable.
Thanks. Sure. This actually came out of when I used to work for the Social Security Administration, and I would take disability applications when a person would come into the field office, and sometimes they'd come in and I would just see from the body language, like a feeling of defeat or, not wanting to do it. Or I would be taking a retirement application and recognizing they'd been out of work for quite a while and start asking about that and why, and needing to explain to them, well, you could file for Social Security disability benefits. And it really is the idea of that people don't realize that you're paying for Social Security benefits. You're paying premiums every time you work, and you see that paycheck and you see those FICA taxes come out of it. You're paying into the program. And what you're paying for is more than just retirement benefits, which is what most people think of. You're paying for retirement benefits, disability benefits, survivor benefits, and health insurance benefits. You're getting a pretty good amount for the bang for your buck. So the idea is that when you're unable to work, you've been paying into this program to provide you with some income during that period of time if you meet the definition of disability. So it's not a handout. It's not a welfare program. It is fully funded by people who are working, are paying into the program, and that's the money you draw on to receive out is based on everybody working. Social Security is a pay-as-you-go system. And what that means is that everybody who's working is paying into the program. The people receiving are receiving it out. What keeps this program viable is having a large work base. You need more people working than you have receiving. That's what's going to keep it funded. But you've been paying into it based on your age, based on how much you've worked. If you're eligible, then you really are just saying, okay, I can't work right now, but my hope is that I'll be able to work in the future. And that Social Security isn't a permanent disability program, and you can receive it maybe for a year or two or maybe 5 years, and then you feel you can go back to work. You can now take advantage of some Social Security work incentives and potentially get back to work and maybe get off Social Security disability, which is great. That means you used it for what it was there for. For the period of time you couldn't work, you had this income that would help replace some of the income that you lost. And then once you're able to go back to work, you're able to go back and start paying into the program. And maybe you're going to have more income by the time you file for retirement benefits down the road.
I love how you explain that. So for this community, people who, we're not talking about people who just received a diagnosis of an aneurysm, because I know a lot of times they get scared, but there's a road that you need to travel down first to determine if you're eligible. But let's assume that they meet the definition, and whether it's going to be 2 years that maybe they have to be out of work, or it's indefinite. We just don't know, because a lot of people, this is not the same for every person. Some people lose limbs. They have a loss to a kidney or, an organ when they have a dissection, and there's potential side effects and complications from surgeries all the time. Sometimes we think it's going to go easy and then people have a stroke. So it's just a wide range of individuals and reasons why they literally just cannot go back to work, because the impact on their blood pressure from physical or psychological, because there's so much PTSD associated with this as well. So somebody realizes, I'm not going back to work. It's just not going to happen. I do want to ask real quickly about the eligibility as far as your prior work experience. And then I'd like you to take somebody through the process on basically step one. What's going to happen to that person?
Sure. Yeah, I'll handle that. So essentially, it's as Barb explained, you have to have worked and paid into the system, right? And if you look at your paychecks, 7.65% of every dollar that you earn, you pay towards your portion of your Social Security. And your employer also pays an additional 7.65%.
Oh.
So that's 15.3% of every dollar earned is going into Social Security fund. And again, the deal is, should you need it in retirement, disability, as we were talking about, or should you pass away and have dependents, there'd be survivor benefits for your children. So if someone is out of work and looking to apply for disability, there are 4 levels at what they call the administrative level under Social Security Administration. The first is the initial application. Now, unfortunately, only about 39% of people who apply at that level get approved. And right now, there are extreme backlogs in that area. It used to be that these decisions were made in 90 to 120 days, 110 days, even like 4 or 5 years ago. But now it's more than double that. It's around 230 days at that initial level. So that's obviously a hardship on people if they're waiting to get that approved. So that's the initial application. You file with the Social Security Administration. You can file it online. You can file it with an attorney. And then what will happen is Social Security will ask you for your names and address of your doctors, et cetera. And then it'll go to your state agency who makes the medical determination. It's called the Disability Determination Service. And they'll reach out using authorizations you signed to your medical providers, and they'll gather all that information. And then they're going to make a decision whether you meet the requirements or not. Should that be denied, which again, only 39% are approved, so a lot of people are denied, then the first level appeal is called the reconsideration, where you basically, it's back to the same thing. You're just saying, hey, look at it again. Unfortunately, only about 15% of those people are then approved. So, we say it's kind of like a rubber stamp denial, right? So then you just got to stick with it. Don't get discouraged. And then you'll go to the hearing level. And at that level, approximately 50% of applicants are approved at that hearing level before an administrative law judge, which is, I think, where you had to go, Karen, where you mentioned earlier. So
yeah. I did with 860 some papers that he told me he had presented to him. And I went and I was crying. I was so nervous. I was so sick to my stomach. I was so scared. I don't go for traffic tickets. I mean, I was brought up, you don't want to go to court. So I was very scared, and it was so easy. I don't think I could have ever done this without having an attorney with me. There's just no way. There was so many steps in this process, questions that were asked about, do you get along with people? Do people like you? Can you crouch? Can you stand? And, when you're a patient and you find that you're saying, not know that people didn't like me, but no, I can't do this physical activity, and no, I can't do that. And you really need to quantify what that means, which I did not know. Like, how many hours do you actually sleep and take a nap? And, how long can you sit? And oh my brain just shut down. I was so full of anxiety. I can't answer questions on a given normal day since this operation, but in that moment, it's such overload of trying to answer questions about an event that happened that you're not too sure you even remember all the pieces to, and you understand what's happening. And now you have to actually accept that you're doing this process. So I personally highly recommend having somebody there, being your cheerleader and championing for you in the corner. It makes it so much easier. And your staff they're just so empathetic and patient and just truly wonderful to work with. And I'm sure many firms have people that are like that, but just in the process, what a difference it made from when I first tried to fill out the first form. And I was like, nope, hard stop.
Sure.
Nope.
Yeah. The hearings, by the way, go ahead, Barb.
Go ahead. I was just going to talk about that. The process it's not easy. It's not easy to do it on your own. The application that you could fill out is now self-help, but it was never self-help. Originally, it was never intended to be a self-help. It was supposed to be a person working at Social Security filling it out for you. So they're making sure that you understand the questions and you're answering it correctly. Well, as budgets have shrunk, Social Security doesn't have the manpower to do that. So they've allowed people just to fill it out themselves. And when they do this, they're making mistakes. They don't understand the question that's being asked. So one of the benefits of using a representative to help you is we're going to complete the application with you. We're going to make sure that everything is answered correctly. We're going to tie everything back to work, the fact that you can't work. And that's what they're asking when they're asking you about what you do in an average day or your activities of daily living. So we take care of all the paperwork. We can make sure that everything gets filed. We also will attempt to get all of your medical records versus allowing Social Security to do it, because Social Security will send for your medical records, but that's about it. They're not going to continue to follow up to see if they get everything. And it is notoriously hard to get medical records. So a lot of times your medical decision might actually be made on incomplete data because they don't have everything. So having a representative, making sure that all your medical is submitted, making sure that all the forms are completed accurately goes a long ways towards you potentially getting an award at the initial level. It's not impossible if everything is submitted and done correctly and you have the medical to support the fact that you're unable to work. So really just making sure that everything is done correctly is one of the main reasons to have a representative, and also to help the process go faster. Social Security, as Chris mentioned, is taking forever now. It's longer than it's ever been in history to get a decision at the initial and the reconsideration levels. And so one thing that we do is make sure we do everything as quickly as possible, supplying that complete application to Social Security. They're not waiting for medical, calling Social Security repeatedly to make sure that they know they have everything, just makes that case potentially get awarded, or a decision at least, a little bit faster, so we can move to that next level, potentially get to that hearing level where we have you the best chance of getting awarded, and where we represent you in person. I say in person, you now have a choice. You can do a hearing in person, you can do it by telephone, or you can do it via video. So there's options now in terms of doing it, but we're right there with you, guiding you through it, preparing you for what it's going to be like, what we're going to say, what you might be asked, trying to take all of that stress off of you. As you mentioned, Karen, no one likes to go before a judge and be judged. So we want to make this process be as simple and as painless as possible. And you have confidence that we know your situation and we're going to represent you the best we can to get you awarded.
And I feel like the reason why I share my story of what my experience was is because I don't love the idea of another patient going into court, whether it's, which I can't believe how much it's changed since COVID, whether it's in person or on the phone or in video, but you are innately going to feel like you're being judged because you are, but it doesn't have the negative connotation that you as the patient are assigning to it. And you are possibly going to feel less than during it, and that you're incompetent, all these negative feelings. It's all very normal because everything's being shown to you in the world's biggest mirror. And you may have had your head in the sand this whole time, and now it's out. And it's something that I don't know that physicians or people can really prepare you for until you talk to somebody else who's gone through it. I'm not saying it happens for everybody. I was so happy to get that part over and done with, and just left it with whatever happens now happens. You know, I'm in a blessed situation that if it wouldn't have been granted to me, I would have been okay. But there's so many people that are not okay. And what happens to people who are so super struggling? And just, I mean, I can't even imagine when they're waiting for this decision or, you know, time period or court case. What can they do to help expedite? Is there anything?
Well, if they're waiting forever, and the delays now used to be at the hearing level. I think when you went through it, that's where you had to wait the longest time. It was 18 months to 24 months. Now that's down more to 9 to 12 months, which is fine. But there are outrageous delays, like we were talking earlier, at the initial application level and the first level of appeal. So a lot of times they just don't have the manpower, as Barb said, to handle that. So in terms of what we can do in that situation, because many times people have no income and they're desperate for this. And what we'll do is sometimes we'll go to the office of Regional Office of Public Affairs with Social Security and say, hey, what's going on? Sometimes I can move it. But often, too, we'll have individuals reach out to their congressperson or senator's office, because they have federal liaisons there that they'll work. If you're struggling to get in touch with a governmental agency, they have people in their staff that'll assist with that. Now, don't get me wrong, they're not going to get it approved or not. They're not going to get into the merits of the case. But what they can do is they'll inquire, and then sometimes it'll kind of move your case from the bottom of the pile, so to speak, to the top. And I think, and Barb and I, we both used to work for the Social Security Administration. And when those congressional calls came in, you know, the manager would come out of their office and they'd go over to whoever said, what's going on with this one? And, you know, it would get the attention because, Congress, Social Security goes hat in hand to Congress for funding and whatnot. So they want to be responsive when they call them about one of their constituents. And then when your manager and your Social Security office says, hey, what's going on with this one? You're going to make sure you work on that one so you can report back to them in a few days what the story is. So that's, we can't do it in every case, right? But when we see people are really struggling with this situation and these, unconscionable delays, that's one thing you can do.
Now, before we get into like the second half, which is what happens now once you've been approved, I remember, and one time we did talk about this, part of the process, at least for me, and it could be for other people, is because there was a psychological element, is what I'm assuming, because there's PTSD involved. I had to go see a doctor, a psychologist. Was not mine, was not one of the two that I had been seeing, but I was told that I had to go see them. And I really thought I failed, but it turned out I passed. An ambulance went by while I was sitting in there, and that was my massive trigger. And I think I curled up on the floor. It was just a bad response, but I guess that was a good response, however you want to look at it. And I just thought it was horrible. This person was not empathetic nor sympathetic. And I guess I get it. They have to remain neutral. They see so many people a day, but I hated it. I hated every second of that. I felt so, I just felt like I, in some way, got belittled. It's just all up here, right? I was very, very emotional. And so what happens when people are they still being requested to see one of their own, like, state doctors? I don't know how to call it. Is that still happening? And what do we do about that?
It depends. First of all, as we know, anytime someone is disabled, and even if they're not going out on disability based on primarily a psychological diagnosis, if someone's in severe pain, for instance, and they're not able to work, they're sure as heck they're going to get depressed, right? Because everything they're doing, we in America, or maybe humans, get our self-worth a lot from working, right? Yeah. And when suddenly you can't do that for no fault of your own, you start to, self-doubt. And so a lot of people do get depressed. So primarily they're supposed to go with the information that your own treating psychiatrist or psychologist would say. But sometimes these doctors aren't able to answer, or they don't answer in the manner they want. So in some instances, they will set up what they call a consultative medical exam with an independent expert. Now those are mostly being done also on video or on telephone, not so much in person anymore. But so when that happens, we try and, first of all, I'm sorry you had to go through what you went through, but we try to prevent the person from having to do that, especially if they have their own, the provider who should be able to provide their information and who should know them better than just a one-time examiner. But occasionally Social Security will send you to a one-time exam, whether it be for a psychological evaluation or whether it be for a physical evaluation, again, depending on what they can get from your treating physicians.
Okay. Now we've talked about what they need from a medical standpoint to qualify. But there is a need to have worked a certain amount of quarters. Can you explain a little bit about that in order to qualify for this?
You can go. Barb's good at that one.
Basically, when you pay into Social Security, every year, it's just your salary. It's like when you pay in, it's whatever you're earning, so whatever your wages are. Social Security has a cost for it. It's called a credit of work. And max you can earn is 4. So the most credits you can have in a year is 4 in a year. So then when you file for a benefit with Social Security benefits, based on how old you are, will determine how many credits you need to have to be eligible. Okay. And the younger you are, the less work you need to have. Really, it is they look at your age and they subtract age 22, and you need to have that many quarters. If you were filing for retirement benefits, you'd need 40 quarters of work. So if you had worked at least 10 years in your lifetime, earning those 4 quarters, just 10 years of work would make you eligible. So even if you only work from age 20 to 30 and then you never worked again, you could be eligible for retirement at age 62 because you have those 40 quarters of coverage. Again, the younger you are, the less work you need to have. But there's one other factor that needs to be met for Social Security disability. It's not just having enough work based on age, it's having enough work in the recent past. Because remember what I said about how Social Security disability is designed to replace the income that you've lost because you can no longer work. Well, if you haven't worked in the past 20 years, then Social Security is going to say, well, there's nothing to replace. So they do have this component called disability insured status, which means you have to have worked at least 5 years out of the prior 10 from the date of onset. Okay. So if you were disabled in May of 2024, between May of 2014 and May of 2024, you have at least 20 quarters of coverage. That may be 5 years, that may be 2 quarters here, 1 quarter there, but just over the past 10 years, did you work at least 5 years? And that's the recency component to say, yes, there is income to replace versus the person who hasn't worked in 10 years. And you're like, well, you figured out how to live for the last 10 years without work. There really isn't that income to replace. So that's really the main difference between Social Security disability and retirement. Retirement doesn't have a recency component. component is just, do you have enough work over your whole life? Where disability is, do you have enough work in the recent past that needs to be replaced, allowing you to be eligible for benefits?
That's great. I mean, especially for younger individuals who, when you're younger, you work a year here, you take a couple months off, then you put a couple months on, and also for individuals who lost their jobs during COVID. We're not talking about what did you do in the last year. We're talking about 20 quarters over 10 years prior to the date of your moment that you feel you became disabled. And so that's really great. I think that's really important. Go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, Karen. I was going to say, people, if they're listening, they can check on if they qualify for what their benefit would be themselves. They can go on the Social Security website, which is www.ssa.gov, and they can sign up for what's called My Account. And they'll make you go through some things, making sure that it's definitely you. And then once you are on there, what will happen is you can look at all your earnings that Social Security has under your earnings record, and then give you an estimate of how much you'd get should you be approved for disability, or if you're coming up to retirement, or even if retirement's way down the road, you can say what your estimate would be based on your earnings and retirement years. So that's a way someone can tell for sure where they've worked long enough.
Okay, perfect. I was going to stop and take some questions, but I've changed my mind. And what I want to do instead is I want to keep going. I want to keep going because I think we're on a roll right now, and I don't want to take questions that may have to do with what I want to talk about next. So somebody has been approved. What happens now when they find out, yes, whichever stage, whatever got them to be approved, they've been approved? Because we've talked about this a couple times, and people don't realize of the money that they're being awarded, how far back it goes, retroactive, kids under 18 get half of what you're awarded. It can be very confusing. So please explain. Someone finds out, yes, you've been awarded disability. When does that, you just explain it. I'm not going to ask the questions and jump through. Go ahead.
All right. So everybody has a date of onset, right? So the date of which maybe you had a traumatic incident, or maybe it was not traumatic, but it's the last date you were really able to work. That's your date of onset. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're going to try and get Social Security to find that you were disabled as of that date. If they do, everyone has to wait 5 full calendar months before they're due their first check. So before their date of entitlement. It's called your waiting period. So 5 full calendar months from the date of onset. So for example, let's say you were disabled on January 15th. Your waiting period is February, March, April, May, and June. July is your date of entitlement. July is the first month you're due a check. You're always paid in arrears. So it means your July check isn't actually paid to you until August. So whenever you get a check, it's for the month before. Now, as we've talked about, it can take a long time to get Social Security. It could take potentially 3 years. Say you filed, you were denied, you filed a reconsideration, you were denied, you filed a hearing, you're eventually awarded. As long as you filed those appeals, you've protected that original filing date. You could be paid back all the way to your date of entitlement. So you might have 2 or 3 years of retroactive benefits due you. That could be $20,000, $30,000 of past due benefits that will be paid to you, and then you'll start receiving your regular monthly benefit ongoing going forward. So one key is I said, you had to file that appeal, and that's because Social Security can only pay you back 12 months from the date you filed. So say you have an individual who goes out and just files and maybe is denied and then says, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. And they don't. And for another 2 years, they're out. And then they say, you know what, I'm going to go try again. And so they file again and they allege that same onset date, which is now 3 years in the past. And Social Security finds them disabled as of that date. Social Security can only pay them back 12 months from when they filed. Mm-hmm. So they can't go all the way back. So The only way you can go all the way back is if you end up filing appeals, so you're protecting that original filing date. So it's a reason once you start the process to keep going through it. Not only do your chances improve as you go through the process, but you also are ensuring that you're going to get benefits back as far as possible in case you are awarded.
Okay, and so then once you're awarded, if you have children who were under the age of 18, that whole time while you've been waiting, you are entitled to receive an additional check worth 50% of what you're getting for each child?
It's 50% total. There's usually a family maximum. It's 50% for a dependent, whether that be a spouse or a child who's eligible on your record. But then if there's 2 children, instead of getting 50%, it'd be 25 and 25. So a total of 50% for all the dependents that are eligible. That's the standard rules. There are some exceptions where it might be less than that, but it's typically 50% for all the dependents that are on your record. And so, yes, that's a child, natural or adopted child under the age of 18. Benefits will stop when the child turns 18 unless they're still in high school. And then benefits can continue until they're 19 or they graduate, whichever comes earlier. And so natural or adopted. If it's a stepchild, it's a maybe. You have to prove that you were providing half of their support in the 1 year prior to your disability for that stepchild to be eligible.
Okay. And that is important because I think that was a very last second thought on my behalf. And I don't know why we waited to the last second, but I don't even know how I found out about it, but it was a last minute conversation. And so I've always make sure to bring that up to people because I don't know how aware, especially people that aren't working with attorneys, how aware they may actually be when it comes to that. So
they should be, it should be listed on an application. It's a question. Do you have any children under the age of 18 or under the age of 19? And what happens is the reason why it seems to come at the end is Social Security doesn't process those children's applications until you're awarded. And the reason is they don't want to process it in case you're denied. So they wait. And so once it's awarded, then they're going to deal with taking the applications for any other dependents that may be eligible and getting those paid. So it comes on the back end. It's just really important that you list them on the application so they're protected, that protecting them back. If you don't list them, they fall under that same rule where they can only be paid back 12 months. So it's really important that you answer those questions accurately.
And then does that trigger a notification to go to Medicare? Or is that something that you have to, the fact that you get awarded, or is that something, another call you have to make to start receiving Medicare?
Nope, it should be automatic. Well, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, Medicare will be automatic once you've been approved, but it isn't paid right away. It's actually 29 months from your date of onset of disability. So let's go with the example that Barbara's talking about. She mentioned January, let's say that was January of 23, that person became disabled. First check 6 months later, in essence, July of 23. And then it's 24 months from that date, you'll get entitled to Medicare. So in my example, it would be July of 25. Which is too bad, right? Because you're disabled now and you need it now, but they have this long waiting period for Medicare. And it's, it's a problem because, in our society, we get our health insurance associated with our work. But once you're disabled, not able to work, often your employer kind of shoves you off their health plan and you don't have anything for a while. So it's really vitally important for these folks to get entitled to Social Security disability. So at least they'll have, Medicare down the road. There've been some changes that have been very positive with the Affordable Care Act and or Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, because they used to have you run into the pre-existing condition problem, and you're disabled, and then you lose your health insurance through your work, and then no one would insure you, and you'd really be in real trouble. But now at least you can't be refused for that, and you can pick up some sort of insurance until Medicare kicks in at 29 months for your onset or 24 months from your date of entitlement to cash benefits.
Isn't that amazing that the whole pre-existing condition was 15 years ago or something like that? It was before 08, right?
Yeah, well, no, I think it only went into play, I want to say in 2012, something like that.
Okay,
yeah,
I
12 years
remember.
ago. You're right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, it seems like it's just always been there because it just makes sense, but it hasn't. That idea has not always been there. And if anybody's curious about my own time frame, I became disabled. My event was January 29th of 15. So I initially was on short-term disability with my employer, which took you February, March till April. And then they moved me to long-term and they extended my FMLA coverage. They didn't have to, but they went past 12 weeks. And by mid-May, I knew I wasn't going to be able to come back. So immediately once I started long-term, they handed me the information to work with you guys. So I don't think I had all of my awards until July of 17. And I think it was like September, maybe somewhere around there that I was talking with Medicare. I think it was June, then you had to wait till you got your check. And then it was sometime towards fall, 2 years, after the event before everything came through. And I thought it felt like forever until now. And I realized that was probably really quick, comparatively speaking.
It's a lot when you're going through it, right? It's a long time when you're
forever.
going through it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was forever. But, at the same token, it's like, you're so preoccupied, some people, with so many doctor's appointments and cardiac rehab and everything else, that this is the last thing I needed to worry about. So once I knew I could hand it off and I just did the things I needed to do, my dream always was that I could just wake up one day and say, I don't need it, I'm going back to work, this is great. And it just didn't happen. But I do want to talk about people who do try to go back to work, because I think the misconception out there is once you get it, you don't want to go back to work. You want to try to do stuff underneath the table, like they'll take away your money if you work at all. And again, Barbara, you do a great job of explaining this, because it really is, it's just the opposite. It pays to try to work. If you think you can try, you should try. And I want you to explain what that means and how much people can earn now.
Sure. Yeah, Social Security wants people to go back to work. And so they know that if they made it be that, the minute you go back to work, your benefits are going to stop, you're going to be terminated, or you're going to get overpaid, people wouldn't do it. So for that reason, they have work incentives. Any person who's awarded can go back to work for 9 months. It's called their trial work period. And no matter how much they earn during these 9 months, they get their full Social Security check. So they're not overpaid and they're actually due the money. So you get your full wages from working, you get your full Social Security check, you get the opportunity to try it out, to know if you're going to be successful. And again, it's 9 months and it doesn't have to be consecutive. So you might try a job for 3 months, job doesn't work out for whatever reason. 6 months later, you start again. Okay, now you've gone into your 4th month. So they don't have to be consecutive, but you get these 9 months to try it out. When you've completed your 9th month, you then enter a new period of time called your extended period of eligibility. And this lasts for 3 years. And during those 3 years, if you're working and earning over a term Social Security called substantial gainful activity, then you're not due your check that month. If any month you are under substantial gainful activity, you are due your check. So they don't pay partial checks. You're either going to get your check or you're not. And you're not terminated. You're in work suspense or you're in pay for another 3 years. So think about that. 9 months, you can work, you get your full checks. Now I get 3 years where maybe I'm getting a check, maybe I'm not, depending on how much I'm earning. That substantial gainful activity figure changes annually. This year, it's $1,550 per month. And next year, it's going to be $1,620 per month. So it's not a huge amount, but it's an amount that, say you're doing something partial or small amount and you're staying under that, well, then you can stay under that potentially indefinitely, getting those wages and staying on Social Security. If you do go back to work and you're looking like you're, pretty close to that SGA amount, but staying a little under it, that could trigger Social Security to do a medical review of you. Could say, you know what, I think that maybe they're trying to stay under this and they could earn more. Right. So that it does open you up to the potential of that. But if nothing's changed in your condition, when you have a continuing disability review, you are not going to be terminated. It really is for the person that's shown some significant medical that shows they've improved. A lot of people get scared when they have a continuing disability review. And it's not something that you need to be scared of unless you really have shown some empirical evidence out there that shows your condition's gotten better. If nothing's changed, then it's just something Social Security is required to do, and your claim is just going to continue.
I get scared because I've called Chris. I've said, I just got a letter from Social Security. Why? And I get all freaked out. All you said is, has anything changed? Is everything the same? I'm like, it's the same or worse. He's like, you're fine. Don't worry about it. But even though I know this logically, when it happens to you, well, I don't like anything in the mail with 3 letters. I don't like IRS. I don't like MVA. I don't like, SS or SD. I don't like anything. 3 letters just makes me nervous. But what I love about this, and I try to make sure people are aware, is that, if you're feeling better, but the anxiety comes from trying, there is nothing wrong in trying. You can try, and you've got 9 months to try. And like you said, if you try, but then you have a setback, you deal with your physical setback. But if you want to try again, you try again. And lo and behold, if one day it works, as long as you earn less than $1,550, I'm not talking about $1,542. So if you ended up making $1,100, $1,200, you're still going to get your disability check. But if you end up working and it's working out for you, that's great. That's the whole goal. That's the whole idea behind disability insurance anyway. It's insurance. And if you try and it doesn't work, well, then you just stick with receiving your checks, right? You would just let people know I'm no longer working. And you can do this whole process multiple times when you're on disability. So, I mean, believe me, there's been so many times I think about going back to work, and then I wake up from my nap and I say, oh, I guess it's not going to work again. That's what happens. And it's just medication and my other issues that I have. I never know when it's all going to kick in and not. And so, but everybody has these dreams. They would love to be able to do it or do something from home, maybe have a side business that you control the hours that you work that fit your physical need. And it's okay to report it. It's okay. This is what they want to see. And it's also very inspiring and motivating to other people to see that you can do it. And you're going to feel good too. But if it doesn't work, then that's fine. At least you have this net, you know what I mean? This fail-safe net, which I think is great.
Yeah,
So.
and one thing I want to mention about the attempting work is we were talking basically if you're already approved, right? And then you want to go back to work. But sometimes when you're waiting in this process, which can be long, you might want to try to return to work as well. And again,
Right.
Social Security has a liberal approach to that as well. They allow you to have what they call an unsuccessful work attempt. 3 letters, UWA, not bad this time. Though.
Right.
And so basically, and they'll allow you to attempt to return to work for up to 6 months. And if you fail, then it's okay. They're not going to use it against you. And a lot of times when people call me and say, what should we do? I'm waiting. I'm going to try. What should I do? I'll tell them, absolutely try. Because if it works, well, then that's great. That's what you want to do. You want to get back to work. If it doesn't work, then if we have to go into the appellate level and talk to a judge, one question judge will often ask is, well, have you tried to do any other type of work? And if you say no, well, didn't even try anything lighter. But if you say, yeah, I did try this, an easy setup with my friend and his business, and I still couldn't do it, it lends more credence to at least you tried to do something and failed. So I always encourage people to try to return to work, whether we're waiting to get it or even certainly after you're approved.
Okay, wonderful. We have a bunch of questions before I
Great.
even go to Josh to ask what he has, because they're popping in on my phone as we're talking. Do people need to worry about having pictures of themselves taking vacations if they're on disability? Do they need to worry about volunteering for organizations and pictures of them doing something like that is out there? Is that deemed work? Like just having a life, can they get punished?
Not with Social Security. Social Security does not have surveillance.
Right.
Yeah, it's private insurance companies do. Yeah, private insurance companies will check your Facebook page, et cetera.
Right.
But Social Security specific rules, they cannot do that. Now, will that stop a judge who's thinks he's Sherlock Holmes or she's Sherlock Holmes and looking that up and maybe not mentioning it and using it against you? I don't know. I would still be very careful about what you're putting out there on any social media. You know, there's the famous story of the firefighters in New York, right? They had a whole scam going, and there's one picture of this guy on Facebook where he's in a ski craft and going up and going around and landing, and he didn't look disabled with a bad back to me doing that.
Yeah.
So don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. I know somebody who does that and investigates. So I love listening to the stories of the people. I just don't try to scam, right? Because that's so silly. All right. Somebody is wondering, it appears as though I'm not too sure who they is, cut off gathering this person's medical information and records in March. But so much has happened since then with so many medical appointments, variety of injections, surgery, so much stuff. Is that additional information factored in or will it not be factored in? I think this person's going to be going to the court level. And if not, then how do they get the full picture of what's been going on since March? Correct.
Yeah. If this person's about to go to a hearing at the administrative level before an administrative law judge, and maybe the record's not up to date since March because they're waiting for that hearing date, they absolutely will want to get all that medical evidence and submit it in. Either get it themselves or have their attorney get it, or even you can tell Social Security, please get it.
Okay.
Now, one thing that might have confused me when they said it was cut off, if they've already been denied at the hearing or through the appeals council level and they're going to federal district court, that's different. You can't submit new evidence at that level because they're going to look at what was before the judge when they made the determination.
Okay.
So I'm not sure of all the facts there, but those are the two possibilities.
Okay. If two of the many physicians, if two physicians write letters that I'm disabled, how much weight does that hold in a judge making a decision when they've got two physicians agreeing this person cannot.
Yeah, well,
they cannot go back to work.
that's pretty compelling, right? Two independent doctors separate from themselves, each other, and have, examined you, and they saying the same thing. So I think that's very strong and good evidence for you.
Okay. Does becoming disabled from an elective surgery matter?
No.
Okay.
No, it's the
Doesn't
result.
matter how you became disabled.
It's the result, right? Okay. And on average, which we may have talked about this before too, on average, how much time between third denial and going in front of a judge?
It depends on your state. And by the way, you can go on that Social Security website again and look up, you put in where you're at, which your Social Security hearing office is. They'll tell you exactly, but it does vary. But I would say, I think we could say anywhere from like 7 to 14 months now. I know it's a wide disparity, especially when you're waiting for a check or something approved, but you can look up on that ssa.gov and Google in hearing how long does it take in Raleigh, North Carolina, wherever you are, and it'll give you that information exactly.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, Joshua, if you're free and you want to give us an idea who we're giving shout outs to and questions, that would be great.
Hi, everyone. Well, we have a pretty quiet chat so far. Hi, Tom. Hi, Deb. Jolly workaholic. I'll get it right.
I know you always say that's her last name.
Deb asks, would taking disability benefits for a period of time, then going back to work, affect your Social Security benefits? Now, I know you covered it, but I wanted her question to get in there.
It actually will help her by, if you get it. So what happens is a person's probably talking about retirement, like, am I taking disability? Am I taking away from my retirement in the future? And the answer is no, it's actually the opposite. So when you're out on disability, you're not working. Or maybe you're just doing very minimal amount of work. So you've got these zeros going into your earnings record. So maybe you're out of work for 4 years. 4 years you didn't work. You've got zeros in that earnings record. You never filed for Social Security disability. You now go file for retirement. Retirement's going to take your top 35 years of work over your lifetime. Maybe it's including those 0 years. If it is, that they come up with your average monthly wage over your lifetime, and they use that in the formula to come up with your benefit amount. So if you had 4 years of zeros, your average monthly wage over your lifetime is going to be less. If you get on Social Security disability for those 4 years, Social Security will exclude them from the computation. So now you don't have 0 years in your computation, leaving you with a higher average monthly benefit, which means a higher retirement benefit. So by getting on Social Security disability, you're actually protecting any future benefit by excluding these non-working years from the computation. And the only way to exclude these years is by getting on Social Security disability. So you're actually helping your retirement benefit than hurting it.
Is your retirement benefit the same amount that you're receiving in disability?
It's basically what you'd get if you're at your full retirement age right now.
Okay, so this is what you're getting. Okay. Yeah. All right. That's good to know. Thanks, Deb. Any other questions?
Back to you, Karen.
Okay. All right. My head just went because I'm thinking about her. No, what I'm thinking about is that he keeps pronouncing her last name workaholic. So it just threw me for a loop. I'm so sorry. But that's Josh for you. That's Josh for you. So getting back to the last question real quick. When you talk about somebody trying work, so if they work and they're doing well and they're earning more than that amount, that $1,550 or $16, whatever it's going to go up to, then their check stops. But 2 years in, they're just, the exhaustion level's too much. They really tried. They earned more they're talking to their physician. The physician's like, you tried, you did great, but this is taking too much of a toll on you physically. We're seeing changes and we just need to not work. Did they have to begin the process all over again, or they just pick up where they left off?
They were just in work suspense. So as long as they're still within that 3-year extended period of eligibility, when they stop working, the checks will just start again, and then they'll just continue indefinitely.
And that's it. See, I think that's just me. And I'm telling you, that's the whole pieces that people miss. I think if more people really understood that process, I think more people would try to go back to work. I just do. I think once they get it, they're like, it took so long to get it. I don't even care. Don't even ask me to watch your kid for an hour and pay me. I'm not doing anything because I don't want to screw it up and have to start all over again. I mean, I think that's a natural fear.
Sure.
And they just have to realize not. All right. Well, look, we did really well. We got this all in under an hour. Can you believe it?
Woohoo.
I know. And since the questions, I don't know if anything else has come in on my phone. Let me take a quick check here real quick. Yeah, they were coming in from all different directions. Nope, I think that one is it. Since we don't have any super active questions right now because you guys just do so well at your job, I think we're going to wrap it up. But if somebody wants to get in touch with you, they can just reach either of you, or should we be referring a specific person's name?
Yeah, you use either one of our names and say
Okay.
you're calling from Aortic Hope or wherever. You just mention, you don't have to mention any of that. You just mention you want to apply, and we'll make sure we'll take care of you.
That would be wonderful. I mean, I have your phone number memorized, so there's that. Anytime I see people on one of the 15 different pages on Facebook and I see somebody going there, I'm like, I'm going to PM you and here's the phone number you need to call. So I'm always, because you guys work nationwide, correct? So it doesn't really matter where you live.
Yep.
That's wonderful.
And you don't have to private message them. You just put it out there for everybody.
Well, I've done that
We'll
too.
talk to you
Sometimes I've even tagged Barbara's name in a couple of things every now and then. So yeah, if there's a good question and if it's on our pages, I tag. So yeah, but you know, I get it out there. Trust me, it'll be out there tonight too. All right. Well, listen, if there's no more questions, oh please,
thank you for having us.
I'm so appreciative. And Joshua, if there's no other questions or comments,
Roger that.
Okay, he's multitasking, so that's why I'm waiting for the pause. Thank you both so much for taking time out of your evenings to do this. You could have been looking at the comment, so I appreciate that you're doing this for us tonight. It's always such a joy to have you here. I mean, as you're talking, I have 2 pages of notes that I take because I like to remember, because it's always in the back of my mind. I personally look forward to a day where I can go a whole year without going to an ER, because I always said that would be the moment that I would start looking to see if I could work. It hasn't happened, and my 10-year aortiversary is coming up in January. So, which does mean I've probably almost known you guys almost 10 years. It's probably been about 8 years or so. So thank you both again, taking the time to meet with us and to share this information. It's just so important and critical. And I think it really will leave a lot of people at ease in jumping into this process or being patient while they wait during the process. So thank you both again so much.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
And before anybody goes, please don't forget to click like, click subscribe, and click the bell so that you're notified the next time we go live. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your night.